Salutations, salutations, everyone. How's everybody doing? I hope everyone is doing great on this Saturday afternoon. I um, wanted to make sure that I had my bra on so I could come before you. I was hoping that my guests would have been here by now. I'm still waiting. I'm not sure what's going on, but I do apologize for the delay. I was waiting backstage since 3 o'clock, which is the time that the interview is supposed to begin. And I do understand there are times where we try to let a few minutes lapse on, to give people time to come in or to give the person time you know, to log on. So I'm not sure if she's coming on or not. The person I'm supposed to be interviewing with is Cami Simmons, who is a media strategist, also a health and financial and wellness consultant, and she's also the founder of um, was it Glow Boss Community Unlocked. So unblocked. Excuse me. I was hoping that we were able to discuss, some details about her journey and where she is right now with her business when it comes to all of the things I mentioned. So I'm hoping that she'll make it. I did text her. I gave her all the information that she needed to come on the StreamYard, and I haven't heard from her. So yes, so I'm going to try to see what content I can do in the meantime, because I've always said that I wanted to kind of prepare myself in case something like this happens. But you don't expect things to happen. I know things happen. I'm hoping everything's okay. But if it is okay, then shame on you. I'm just saying because I always talk about this. If you agree and you commit to something, you need to follow through with it. And if you're not able to make it or if something came up, please let someone know. Let the person know. I just can't stand a flake, a person, and I'm just going to be real. Like, I'm sorry if it comes across harsh to some people. I'm sorry if I'm coming across too forward. Um, I'm sorry that it may seem like I'm being a little bit too blunt, but I have to be real about it. I feel like if you're going to agree to do something, you're going to commit to something. And like I said, I am very much understanding how things come up, but at least let the person know there's too much access to um, contact. There's too much access out there, whether it's by texting or whether it's through social media. There are many, many ways that you could maintain communication with someone if you're not able to come through. So, um, so please, just take this as advice, just take this as um, sincere as it's coming at you. If you're not able to come through, or if you're running late, or if something's going on, just let the person know. Don't just leave them hanging. Okay. So, like I said, hopefully she'll come through. I'm going to wait a little while longer. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to see if I can give you some content. So I know there's been a lot of trending topics that's been a lot of things that's been going on in the social media space involving Diddy, the Diddy documentary, Brian McKnight and his, the family that he excommunicated from. There has, been um, commentary on um, the TikToker who went viral for betraying her best friend and by sleeping with her husband at the time, and then the ex-wife successfully sued her for $1.75 million for alienation of affection. So and they um the person that betrayed the best friend and her now husband are just making their rounds on social media. I don't know, made their way to the Tamron Hall show somehow to, I guess, clear the air or um, rationalize their actions. So, I know there's been some stuff going on here. Thank you for those who are coming into the building. You guys don't look familiar to me, but I appreciate y'all coming on, and I just ask that you're respectful in the chat. You know, I know that sometimes y'all like to troll, but troll in a respectful way. You could be a little funny about it, that's fine, but just make sure that you're respectful. That's all I ask. All right. But yeah, so I know there's been a lot going on. And I know I've also, there's been some comments from Swanky Dineva that has resurfaced because I mean he's been on a roll lately between the whole Tamar Braxton situation, and now he has some things to say about parents who don't have enough control over their autistic children. And I want to kind of touch on that a little bit because I do understand how people, like in certain spaces where they are around parents or children with autism, and I know how it can be when, you know, that those children are need special treatment. They need like their iPad or certain things that would help them to remain calm because sometimes when they're overstimulated, they'll be affected in a certain way because like there are times they may not like too much noise, or they don't want to feel like if there's a conversation, or if there's direct communication with them in a certain tone, they don't want to feel like they're being attacked or yelled at. So I mean, but there's different spectrums of autism. There are different levels of autism. And if you're not, if you're from the outside looking in and you don't do your research, or you're not someone who's in close proximity to an autistic child or autistic person, you may not understand as much, and may not know how to handle it, and you may, think that it's okay to come on your platform and start to spew such venom towards the autistic children and the parents that have to deal with them, because dealing with children who are considered normal is enough as it is, because I had a my son, he was diagnosed with ADHD as a child. Okay. And so I had to deal with a lot of the impulse behaviors and hyperactivity, not an inability to listen and constantly talking, being disruptive, and all of the things that so many people used to complain about to me. And I always had to make sure that not only did I have to be the fair disciplinary, I had to be fair when it came to discipline, because even though yes, there's certain things he can't control because he has a chemical imbalance, but at the same time, it doesn't exempt him from, having certain reinforcements implemented. But it has to be within a certain, parameters, right? Um, but there are certain aspects of his behavior that is due to a chemical imbalance. So I may go more further into it as eventually, as far as what I had to deal um, with my son having ADHD. But a lot of people would complain and be like, "Oh, your son this and your son that," or I mean, I don't can't tell you how many times I've been contacted by the school. And and it's like in elementary school and junior high school, one thing I could say is that they really have been doing their due diligence to work with me, because they knew how active I was as a parent. I was very responsive when they call, even if they leave my job, or I went to the parent teacher conferences, and try to handle things accordingly, right? So that does make a difference when you maintain the lines of communication with the people that your son is working with, whether teachers, babysitters, or your church, whoever within the community, you know, because they're going to have, I mean, there's been many times I had to check a lot of people about how they, um, or what they say about my son as well, because I'm not going to, I mean, it's one thing to offer your unsolicited advice, by the way. It's one thing to offer advice, but it's a whole nother thing when you're um, coming at my son a certain way, like when you threaten them, or you feel the need to make negative comments about him. It's just certain things you don't want to say, as to me as a parent, about my child, because I'm going to check you, you know, because he's not always wrong, and I always make sure that I get all sides of things because I don't want, it to my son to think that I'm just a more inclined to believe an adult when they said he's rude or being this way or that way. I want to get his side of things first. So that's so important that you know you that you understand your child more, study their patterns, praise them when they do well, and also reprimand them when they're not. Because they have to understand that there's certain things that they do that are wrong. But going back to Funky Dineva's comments, he was just some of the things that I've said and he said about how, you go to certain spaces. He was talking about the parents should go to the doctor's office like 5 in the morning, so they don't have to be around too many people. Well, maybe you should go 5 in the morning. Maybe you should do that. Saying that you shouldn't be so disruptive when the child is so loud and this and that and the other. And instead of complaining about the parent's inability to control that child, maybe you need to help them. Maybe you need to help that parent. You know what? Let me take him off your hands if you don't mind. And I've done this many times. I mean, because we have to work together as community. And I know sometimes it's hard to trust people, especially strangers, but I'd be like, okay, would you mind if I try calming him down? Do you mind if I try to do this? Or, you know, it makes a world of difference, but, you have to learn how to intervene without being intrusive. You have to understand boundaries as well. So for Funky Dineva to make those type of comments, he doesn't have a full understanding of what it's like to deal with autistic children. I'm sure he might claim he does because unfortunately, there's so many children within the last 10 or so years have been diagnosed with autism. I think it's 1 in 5 children, especially boys, you know, um, to that's been diagnosed with autism or ADHD or also oppositional defiance disorder because he was diagnosed with that as well. And yes, you're absolutely right. Was it Fred, and Fred? Okay, a whole bunch of Freds. I grew up with severe ADHD, and I want to say that the meds are not good in my opinion. It took me till 40 to get off drugs because of the meds. Wow. And thank you for sharing that. Yes, and that's another thing too. My son has been transferred to several schools between elementary and junior high. And I refuse to medicate him. I refuse to do that despite it was I had so many people against me. I got so much backlash. I got so much pushback for not wanting my son to be on psychotropic drugs. I refuse to drug my son and subject him to the side effects that would, alter his neurological system even more. I refuse to do that. I did take him to homeopathic doctors, holistic doctors, um, and of course, I've gotten a lot of pressure from teachers. Other parents, people in my family, maybe just they start you off with a small dosage and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, look, I do appreciate your concern and your opinion. Operative word, opinion. I appreciate that. Um, but my decision, because once my mind is made up, I mean, a lot of people will understand how stubborn I am, but it has nothing to do with pride. Because I know I spoke to someone about them saying that, oh, it's about pride that I don't put them on meds. No, nothing to do at all with pride. It has everything to do with the well-being of my son, and giving him medication would not be in my son's best interest. And so, and just so you know, under the No Child Left Behind law, no school or camp or anything involving children, they are not allowed to turn away your child if you refuse to medicate them. If they put you under pressure to um, medicate your child in order for them to enroll into a particular school or to participate in a summer camp or whatever, that is completely wrong, and you need to address that if you can address that legally because they are not supposed to do that. Putting your child on any medication for um, whatever disorder you have is not a prerequisite for any school. And because a lot of times, a lot of parents, because I know just my experience with fighting with not fighting the legal way, fighting, as far as advocacy goes for my son with the Board of Ed and stuff like that, just kind of, reinforcing my position in regards to that. It is not a prerequisite for your child to be medicated in order for them to be enrolled in school, in order for them to participate in certain things. They're supposed to be accommodating for that. They accommodate the same way they accommodate autistic children or any other disorder, they're supposed to accommodate. Because I've had, like I said, I've had instances, because even I had to speak to a higher up when I tried to get them in the fresh air fund. And they had a division that where you could apply for your child to participate in the fresh air fund for special needs children. And even they said when I sent them my paperwork, his IEPs and all that good stuff, they were saying about how his behavior, he would not be able um to be accepted. And I'm like, okay, that's completely false. I want to speak to somebody who you report to, because that is totally wrong. Because I know that there are children with more severe cases than my sons, and they're able to still participate in certain camps and schools. So just kind of give you an idea. Because, like I said, I've dealt with that. The people like Funky Dineva who complain about my son not keeping still being active, especially when um the church I used to go to. I used to attend a 7-day Christian church, and I grew up in that church. I got baptized there. And so they watched me grow as an adult, and now having a child there and having, having to deal with, his behavior and trying to kind of calm him down during service and all that stuff. And it was just like people looking back as if they never dealt with a misbehaved child before. Like my child just stood out. And so it just really was uncomfortable for me, because it just felt like um they wasn't trying to be compassionate enough. They would complain to me after church, and it was just, and it honestly, it kept me from going. I stopped going less often, and they will wonder why. I kind of separated myself because of that, because I'm like, I understand that it can be an issue when you're trying to focus, or you're trying to um focus on service, or there are times when you in public spaces and you don't want to be disturbed or as a disruption. But when you have children with special needs and you're in the same space with them, you have to understand what parents got to go through. You have to understand that it's not all it's not all the child's fault. It's not all their fault, you know. But I just thank God that I was able to get him into a school in upstate New York that was um it was a great school. Even my son, as he gotten older, he expressed his gratitude towards, the staff at the school that he went to. It was a residential treatment program that he went to. He stayed on campus there for a couple of years. It's called Green Chimneys. Shout out to Green Chimneys. Um, and it was word of mouth that I even heard about it, because I was looking up different spaces, different places that he can go to, that he wasn't pressured to take medication. He didn't have to. It was on a farm, and one of the part of the curriculum was that he was able to participate participate in animal interaction, which is the greatest form of therapy for children with special needs. They was on a farm with animals, and he was able to learn how to play chess. He played an instrument, and it was challenging at first. When he first got there, like the first year or so, it was challenging. Because my son, I'm gonna just give you full disclosure. As a child, he cursed a lot. You know, he said a lot of derogatory things to some of these teachers and adults. Um, you don't know how many times I've gotten people telling me, "Yo, your son was cursing," and he was a bit, he was also a pathological liar. I mean, you wouldn't believe at the age of 9 and 10 years old at the time, the stuff that would come out my son's mouth, the lies that he would tell so naturally. It was scary to me, and that was something that I had to really drill in him. Like, you can't continue to give these falsehoods, and you tell him so well. He was a great storyteller, but If you lie, and then I can't advocate for you if you're telling the truth and no one believes you, honey. But it was a lot of things. I'm telling you, I'm just scratching the surface right now, just kind of give you some references of, what was said, about Funky Dineva and just kind of sharing my experiences with you. Um, so yeah, so he would do all these things, but the thing is that the teachers, you know, or different counselors that were um interacting principals that were interact with him, they would ask me, well, how did you deal with his behavior at home? You know what I would tell them? He did not act this way around me at home. The same behavior, all the cursing, all of the physical, the hitting, all the stuff that he used to do in school, he did not do that with me. You know, that's the thing. And you would think that he would know, that I'm gonna find out these things because he was so afraid of me finding out. Because that's one thing about my son. My son, I don't want you to think that I'm just like I said, I'm just give you examples of how his diagnosis played a major part in his growing up and how it was very difficult, very challenging. But he was a sweet kid. My son is very, 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 very smart. My son is very warm, very giving. He's just so thoughtful, you know? And he always looked out for me, like, so he still had that level of respect for me, regardless. He always had that level of respect for me. So anytime, someone from the school or a teacher would threaten to contact me, he would plead with them not to contact me, like, "Please don't tell my mom, please." And it's like, "But why you still continue to behave the way you do? Then why are you still doing this?" So it's like I try to talk and talk and talk, and yes, I discipline him at times when I needed to, but not very much because I sure wouldn't let nobody else come at him any kind of way either, okay? Just let that be known, because if Funky Dineva was to come at me and talking that crazy talk about towards my son, oh yeah, we would have problems. There will be a tug of war if you're going to come at me about my son and you speaking like I said. It's one thing to address me about something that my son is doing, and we could kind of, as a parent and as an adult, we could settle this and resolve it the best way possible, but you're not gonna just talk about how you need to control your children and your autistic child, this and all that. Let's just come on. Do better, people. Like I said, I do understand that there's some children like that have autism, ADHD, ODD, different types of disorders, chemical imbalances that affect their behavior. And us as parents, as it is our responsibility to make sure that we use whatever resources we can and make sure that um, we instill structure, in their lives to where they know what's right and wrong. That is our responsibility as well. Okay. But at the same time, people from the outside looking in, they don't have a grasp on what it is like. Do some research, talk to some people, especially who are, not just parents, but who are trained professionals who deal with autistic children. Just, get a grasp on it, get a better understanding of what it's like, And like I said, if you see a child misbehaving, a child acting up, throwing a temper tantrum, sometimes you just gonna say, "Mom or dad, is it okay if I, kind of intervene, and help you out, because it can be very overwhelming, it can be very overwhelming. So, I just want to kind of share that with you. Um, and like I said, I know there's been other topics about what I said before about about the chick on TikTok that betrayed her best friend, and yeah, they going on different platforms trying to state, rationalize whatever it is that they've done. And it seems like I don't know if the man, the ex-husband that betrayed his wife, you know, and I think that a lot Brene is her name, Brene, the one that did the betrayal. I know that they talk he and the husband she and the husband now was talking about how they first got together because they know they known each other since 15 or 16 years old, and um they were dating, and his father didn't like her at first, and it was, they was talking about their history of them getting together. So I don't know whether she wants to use the whole idea of of her having him first as her justification for um getting with him while he was married to somebody else. But the fact that remains is that, this guy Tim was married to her ex-best friend. So I'm wondering what consequences or repercussions he's gonna get, because they seem to be sitting real proudly together. So it's gonna be a matter of time where he may do the same thing to you. That she did to not only his ex-wife, but your ex-best friend. And Akira, Akira, the one that was betrayed and sued Renee for the 1.75 million dollars. She's pregnant now. I'm not sure how much time had lapsed between her divorcing from Tim and getting pregnant with the next person, the current person she's with. But the only thing I can say is that I'm hoping you know, that this is this is real, between her and this guy because um it seemed like things were moving kind of quickly between her divorce from Tim and her getting pregnant by someone else now. And I'm hoping that the person that she's with now is not getting high on the hog, because of, all of this going viral and her, winning this lawsuit. I'm hoping that, he's in it for the right reasons. So that would be my main concern for Akira. But, you know, I'm glad she was able to move on from this. And I'm hoping that this will be a thing where, side chicks, don't think that they can just always win at these situations because it seems like, you know, nowadays it seems like side chicks feel like they could just, you know, see with someone else's husband, knowing that they're married and they feel like they are, they have the space or the comfortability to go after the wife or, go on social media and talk all kind of junk about, and just make it seem like they're the ones that's on, you know, the higher totem pole. So I just hope that, you know, even though people might say, well, why go after her? The husband was the one that did the betrayal. They were both willing participants. And if that husband doesn't put everything in check, yes, they need to be held accountable as well, of course. But that side chick was a willing participant, and they knew the risk involved, and so maybe I hope this is a lesson to all side chicks out there, you know, close your legs to marry men. Shout out to Nene Leaks. Close your legs to marry men, people. So you don't wanna run the risk of being sued for, over $1 million or don't wanna run the risk of a lot of other, things happening to you. You know, you don't want that karma to affect you to the point where you end up being harmed or anything like that. Because what's gonna happen? The same person, the same husband that you slept with, that he left his wife for, do you think they're gonna protect you? Do you really think that they're gonna give a damn about you if something would happen to you or you being attacked online? Do you think they really care about you? But um, so now they doing their press tour about this and they want to tell their side of the story, whatever. You could tell, you could try to make you want to try to make sense of this, you want to try to rationalize it, but wrong is wrong. If you are not prepared to suffer the consequences of your actions, then don't do the deed if you because you know that you're running a risk of um facing whatever it is, just remember that you're going to be held accountable. The consequences may not come right away, but they'll get there. The consequences is going to come, and the karma may not even when you reap what you sow. You know, the reaping may not come through you. When the reaping may come go into your child or your grandchildren. God forbid, it can happen that way as well. So just be mindful of that. Um, And I know a lot of people have a lot to say about the Brian McKnight situation. I don't want to get too much into that because I know that I may get backlash for this, but I understand both sides because we're not in that we weren't like closely involved with these people. I don't know them at all. I am a fan of Brian McKnight's music, not him as a person. But you know, you when you hear both sides, they they are both sides of that I do understand their perspective on, and they're both sides that they should play a part in, because it's the same way you hold Brian McKnight accountable. There's some things that you need to hold Julie McKnight and um, his adult children accountable for certain things as well. So I'm just leave it at that. Um, because it's not always just one person. I mean, I know that one person could take on the bulk of the responsibility in a situation, and they need to own that. But it's always, you know, like all parties involved have some part to play in whatever situation. But I'm hoping that, now that they share, they went on different platforms and they share their side of things. I just hope that the back and forth comes to the end at this point. I just think they need to move on. Rest in peace to Nico. I hope that all families, all persons involved, they can move on from this, you know, because this all started when Brian McKnight Jr. made a post about his father, and it started from there. It was a domino effect. So I just hope that right now they could just move on from that situation. So you know, um, it is what it is. So yeah, so I'm not going to be on long. I was expecting um Miss Simmons to come on by now. It was almost 4 o'clock, and I haven't heard from her. I don't know what's going on, but it is what it is. We could move forward. And like I said, I just encourage you, if you're going to agree to do something, well, I could just speak for me. If you agree to come on my platform in any capacity, whether it's an interview or having a particular discussion, if you'll commit to something, please follow through. That's all I ask. Please follow through. Okay. But I'm going to bid you adieu for now. So hopefully, this coming Monday, I'm supposed to have another interview with Master Barber Eric BC Hoppin. So hopefully that would still take place. If not, then I'll let you know. But the flyer and announcement is already on my social, so make sure you look out for that. And I hope that you're able to make it through. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, I appreciate the support that I've been given so far. I do appreciate it, and again, it's not taken for granted. Um, but I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Hopefully, if I don't come before you between now and Monday, please be sure that you tune in for my next interview that's coming up. And in the meantime, have a good one. Mm.